Hello and good day. Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. My name is Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com. We're here because we're on a mission to inspire other people to get outside and enjoy camping adventures such as we have as a family. Today's guest is a fellow Torontonian, spent some formative years surprisingly close to where Tim and I grew up, has adventured in such far-flung places as Nepal, is the host of Fly Travel Radio, and the author of The People You Meet, which is a book about candid travel stories, relationships, bus rides that didn't play out as expected. Please welcome Melissa Rodway. Yay.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you so much.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Good. Staying dry on this rainy kind of day?
Soggy day.
Yeah.
It's dark and rainy, that's for sure, but better things to come.
Yeah.
Yes. Yesterday's first day.
Yesterday? All right.
Yeah. All right.
Spring equinox.
Spring-ish. Rain, at least we don't have to shovel it.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, you'll shovel it anyway. I'm pretty sure you'll shovel it anyway.
Yeah. I'm a winter lover, but it's always nice when spring comes.
Yes. Well, when we were coming back from the Hamilton Adventure Expo, which is the end of January, Toronto was getting hammered with, man, I think we got pushing 2 feet of snow that day. And yeah, I saw a post from you skiing along the waterfront.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes,
terrible.
I was out.
Just terrible.
Yeah. I think I was out for 11 hours that day. I just loved it. So I'm that weirdo.
So obviously I know you do cross country. Do you do downhill as well?
Well, that's a very funny question. I used to, and then I took a very long pause and I revisited it 3 years ago. I did a stint in Quebec City for 5 weeks just to embrace winter. And so
That's
I went
a good place to embrace winter.
Yeah. Oh, it was one of the best things I've ever done. So yes, I did ski there. And then I was like, nope, never again. I'm done. I just felt very nervous. And then a few weeks ago, my friends in Collingwood convinced me that I had to try it one more time. And I have to say I could be venturing back into that world again. So never say never.
Very cool. And Collingwood's a great place to ski.
Mm-hmm.
We used to be hardcore skiers. Once the kids sort of fled the nest, that was the impetus to get out and do stuff. So now I'm just a lazy bum on the couch.
Well, that's fun too. I like that sometimes also.
So I'm curious to know about the bus rides that didn't play out as expected, because we're putting a hook like that in there. We got to know what the story is behind that.
I had a feeling when you said that in the intro. So yes, what comes to mind in this story of The People You Meet is we took many, many bus rides. We were traveling through Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and China. And the cheapest way to do that, of course, is by bus. And often these were very long, hot bus rides, and some were better than others. But the worst one, which I'll tell you about, was in Laos, I believe. And we decided to take an overnight bus. And if anyone has traveled a lot, overnight buses will already, like even saying overnight bus might bring a little bit of PTSD into your nervous system. But there we were. So we decided to do it. I think it was like 10, 11, 12 hours. I can't remember at the moment, but it was long. And it was just awful. It was driven probably by a 16-year-old kid. I mean, that's what he looked like. The bus itself felt like it was not being held together. You could feel almost every bolt and screw and whatever. We were driving on serpentine roads. So, S-shaped roads, like with cliffs on the sides. There was barely a headlight and it was wild. And I remember trying to sleep, although that seems ridiculous. And I would be thrown against the window sometimes because the turns were so sharp. So that would wake me up. The men on the bus were always screaming. We would stop at the side of the road so that everyone could get off, and like a lot of people smoke in that part of the world. So the Laotian men would get out and smoke and pee and scream and holler and whatever. And then it was awful. And then I remember just thinking, this is it. So goodbye, everybody. But you survive. But in that part of the world too, they do hand out a lot of like small black plastic bags for either spitting in or barfing in. So that just tells you what it's like to do bus trips in that part of the world. It might have changed. That was a long time ago, but these are the things you do when you're crazy.
Well, it certainly sounds like it keeps it from being boring.
Yeah, that's where the stories come, you know? These are where we find our creative juices.
That's what everybody says is like, if trip went all smooth and like no hitches,
Yeah.
there's no story
There's
there.
no story. Yeah.
No, exactly.
But when you break a leg and you're, 3 days into the bush, then there's a story there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's hope that never happens to any of us. Has it happened to you before?
No, thank goodness.
I know.
But as I get more senior, it occurs to me that I tend to do backcountry with our eldest. And I don't want him to have to lug my sorry butt out from 3 days in or whatever. So we've started to take
strapping lad though. So
he is still
could probably do it.
I don't like dragging my butt around.
I couldn't do that. So you'd be just stranded there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's funny, like you do think about those things. What I would like is to have I would like to have an elective appendectomy, because my biggest fear is being on some crazy island or wherever you are and you have appendicitis. I do not want that. So a friend of mine recently had her appendix out and I was actually jealous. I was like, how do you do that? I just want it out. Yeah.
So the people you meet being stories about traveling, what started the traveling bug for you?
It's a really good question. That I think it started when I was about 7. My dad was a teacher. So in 1981, we moved to Australia. So we lived outside of Toronto in Port Perry, which if you're familiar, back then it was smaller than it is now. And we went from our small town to an even smaller town. I don't even know if you'd call it a town. So we were outside of Perth in Western Australia in a bush town. And we walked through a rainforest to get to school. It was actually really wild. I mean, this is the 80s. So there was no helicopter parenting. And our parents, once we were familiar, were like, okay, bye. And we went. I remember there were a few kids from the neighborhood, but we all walked through this wild, path where who knows what was in there, but we did it. Our school was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by rainforest. So I'd say that was a really good introduction to the fact that you can have adventures anywhere. And my dad was a big advocate for saying that life can be recreated, anywhere. You don't have to stay in your town. And it was funny, I'm the youngest of 3, and we all cried miserably when we found out we were going to Australia. I was 7, my brother was 10, my sister was 11. And of course, a year later when we had to come home, we were crying again because we didn't want to come back. So yeah, we had accents. My parents rented a van multiple times. So we, traveled around a lot of Australia. I think the only part we missed was the Northern Territory. It's a very, very big country. We went to Bali. No one was going to Bali at that time. It was the dirt roads and there were no tourists really to speak of. I had very, very white blonde hair, and all the locals would come up and give us chocolate and put their fingers in my hair. And they were trying to marry my sister because she was very tall. And my mom was not thrilled about that part. And we went to New Zealand. So I just think that probably planted the seed at a very young age. And then I think at like 29 is when it became a big part of my life.
And so Nepal, and where else have you traveled or ventured?
Goodness. Nepal, Jordan, Turkey, Croatia. I mean, lots. I've been to a lot of Central America, a lot of South America. I'm a late bloomer to Europe. That's new for me. I did an exchange in high school to Belgium. So I'm a fairly decent French speaker, so that's been fun for me to kind of start tackling Europe a little bit. I think I wanted to do the harder stuff, when I was younger, but now Europe's looking pretty nice. Um, and then, of course, Southeast Asia. The only place, like the only continent I really haven't been to at the moment, I think is Africa. So I haven't done anything there yet, but I've done a lot. But there's others who have done much more than I have. But we're just fortunate to be able to do it. It's a real privilege to travel.
Uh, if you don't mind me asking, what's your day job that allows you the time to go and visit all those places?
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing because, well, my day job is I work at a university. I work at U of T in Toronto. And I think that people assume sometimes that you have to quit your life to do these sorts of things. And I'm a very normal person, and I have been able to create spaces for adventure within kind of a regular life. But I am very lucky in that in 2023, I took a year off. So because I come from teachers who I'm very well aware were doing like 4/5s and things like that, I looked into it at the university and they let me do it. So that was pretty awesome. So I was 48 and I did some big bucket list trips for me. But when I did this trip that the book is about, I was 35 and I hated my job and I quit and off I went. So I don't know that I would recommend that again, but it's good to do it once.
All right, I'm going to quit. That's
Oh,
it. I mean,
yeah, I would love to quit too.
the what was the process like to write the book? Like, just do you journal a ton while you're traveling and that, and so that you had notes and stuff, or are you just picking it out of your brain? And then how do you put that on paper, man? Like, I can't even fathom doing, whatever, 14,000 words or, whatever
Yeah.
the book is, right?
So the story is this. It was not on purpose. I was traveling with a partner around Southeast Asia who was doing research for a luxury travel business in the future. We had met years before. He was from England. I was obviously from Canada. We met in Cuba on a cycling trip. And so we just started traveling together and he moved to Canada, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other story. And then we decided to go on this long haul trip. So even though we had traveled together extensively and we had a rhythm, I mean, we were backpackers at heart. He had done way more than I had ever done. And I will credit him with introducing me to even learning how to travel because there's a lot to it sometimes. But we would go on these amazing trips that were like adventurous and we'd be roughing it. And then we'd also stay in luxury from time to time because that was the world that he worked in. So we knew how to do that together. But when you are on a long haul trip, multi-month trip with somebody who has a purpose in meeting people in hotels and having meetings and doing site inspections and, they're working towards a future goal. And then you're me, the plus one who's like, la, 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 it's different, and we had not really ever thought about what that would look like. And I'm someone who, I was still young and I still loved the thrill of adventure, but after a few weeks you can get a little bit cagey, and my brain is always going. So this is a very long-winded answer, but what happened is that I was on these long buses and trains and I started creating these stories in my head about what I was seeing and what I was doing. And once a week, I would find an internet cafe and I would send these massive emails to my friends and family. And that became my job. That was my release. And if I'd been smart enough, I would have started a blog, and you might be talking to me from a very different place at the moment, but that's not what happened. And so there you go. That was sort of, I needed something. So that's what I did. And people started sending it off to their friends and family. And the response was so good that it just kind of inspired me to keep doing this. And then I, over the years, was like, do I, don't I put this into a book? And then I decided 2 years ago that I was going to dust it off and put it out there. And to be honest, I mean, the things you said in 2010, we would not get away with now. So I'm actually relieved I didn't have a blog because I probably would be canceled. So it was for the best. And I think also that you have to like learn. Like, I don't think if you put something out immediately when you've done it, you don't really know what you're talking about. I think you can describe it. I think you can have a few reflections, but it actually took me in revisiting this story to understand what I learned, what happened to me, where like all of it was quite something. So I'm actually really glad that I waited so long.
Yeah, so great to have that record of the whole thing,
Yeah.
being able to reflect on it now and with, added wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The benefit of time.
Yeah. The benefit
Different
of
lens.
time. Yeah. I mean, I tried to stay 35 as much as I could in that story because that was the story. But I still think you just don't know. I think when you're traveling, you're in survival mode. I think a lot of people think you're having these massive epiphanies every 30 seconds, and it's not really like that. It's more like, where's the bus and what am I going to eat and where am I sleeping? Like, you're in that mode. It's not always about what will I do with my life. It's you don't really have the time. Sometimes you do, yes, on long haul trips and whatever, but it's not always this fairy tale world that people think that it is.
Yeah, I've done I've done none. We talked about skiing. That's literally been that and jumping into canoeing, going away from people. But that's the entirety of my travel. Like it's the interior of BC sort of deal.
Well, that sounds very good too.
I do miss those days.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's my experience with Europe. I skied in France and Italy, and I've never seen Europe without snow on it.
Well, that's all right too. And that's the thing, right? Everyone is built differently and has their own need and uniqueness to how they see and do things, even if it's in your own backyard. And I love that. I love these subjective experiences for people. It's so important.
Do you get out and about here, like here at home?
I try to. I mean, that's really funny because anytime I visit any part of Canada, I think, why do I go anywhere else? It is so beautiful and there's so much here. So yes, I do really love Ontario. I've done a few canoe trips like Temagami and another one that I can't remember at the moment. My sister and I used to do some canoe trips in the summers, which I absolutely loved. And I lived out west. I lived in Jasper. I lived in Victoria. I lived in Montreal. But I'm a big fan of the East Coast. So that really has my heart. I had to do a work trip to PEI in October. And have you been to PEI? Oh my goodness. It's magical, that little island. And it's not so little. I was really annoyed actually because I didn't have a lot of time there. And a few people said, oh, you can just rent a car and you'll see it in a day. I'm like, well, if you don't get out of the car, you'll see it in a day. But if you actually want to do things, you need a long time. It's much bigger than we realize. So I think that part of the country is really magical. I love the culture and the people and the music, and I don't know. I just think it's beautiful. So yes, I try to see Canada as much as I can. Ontario as well. Ontario is beautiful. I just went to something from the National Geographic. There was this like lecture on wolves, and there was this amazing man there. Were you there? Okay.
She was there. What was I? I was sick or something.
You were sick.
Well, you missed out. And this guy has seen it all. And I'm sure you heard him say, Ontario is underrated as one of the most beautiful places in the world. And it's so subtle, but it is such a beautiful, beautiful province.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've interviewed a number of guests that aren't from here, and you talk to them, it's like, oh, that sounds really cool. I would like to go check that out, but I'm not done with Ontario. I don't know that I'll ever be done with Ontario. Not that I'm adverse to going somewhere else, but there's so much to see, to do here.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my stomping grounds because it is awesome. Not that
awesome.
having done some East Coast stuff, I totally get that. And I mean, look at CBC. How many of our hosts and stuff are all from the East Coast because they have that art thing going, right? That artist thing going. So
Yes, yes, definitely. And I mean, Tobermory, all of it. It's just, oh my gosh. Even, I mean, I'm sorry, I like backcountry, but I do love car camping as well. So, yeah, it's good. And even we spent a summer a few years ago just going to as many places as we could, and shockingly beautiful, like everywhere, like Bon Echo it's just, oh yeah, there's nothing like it. So I feel that we're very lucky to live here, and I love the seasons. When I was living in Victoria, I absolutely hated it. It's spring all year round. I do not like that. I love Ontario weather.
yeah, somebody else the other day, we were talking about just where we came from, where stops along the road, and I said, again, I haven't seen much of BC that didn't have snow on it, but I said it's beautiful with all the mountains and stuff. And one of the guys said, I lived out there for 4 years and I wanted to kill myself. It rains all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's just, it's like the sun breaks out for about 37 minutes and that's it for this week.
Yeah.
I went, wow, I never even thought about that.
Couldn't live like that.
Yeah, no.
No, I think if you're from here, it's really tough. And I think it's fun to have new sports every 4 months and new clothes and new attitudes and a reason to lie on the couch sometimes. And it's awesome. But it's interesting, for all the places around the world I've seen, the 5 weeks I spent in Quebec City that was one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. So, yay for Canada. It's awesome.
Yeah, our two boys and I went to Quebec City not that long ago, a few years ago, and we just loved it too. It was like middle of winter. It was miserable as far as cold and windy and snowy, but it's such a great city. It's the food is so good. Culture again is so good. And
architecture.
There's so much to do there. I mean, I was there in the winter too, and you can cross country ski and skate in the middle of the city for free, and it's good. Like, it's challenging stuff. So I love their outdoorsiness there. I feel like they don't care how cold it is. They all dress for it. Everyone is outside doing things, and I just love their attitude. I could move to Quebec City like tonight if someone would let me.
Well, yeah, there's no bad weather, just the wrong clothing.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
That's very true. So I haven't read the book, so I don't know entirely. Were there the people that you meet along the way that really stood out as part of that journey?
Yes, many. However, I will say that I do a lot of different types of travel. And when you travel with a partner, it's a different existence because people are less prone to coming into your orbit. I mean, I'm often by myself now, and you meet more people. So when you're with a partner, it's a little bit different. However, yes, certainly we met tons and tons of people. I would say there's two people, well, there's more than two, but the two we'll talk about in this interview that impacted my life. One of them taught me a very valuable lesson. So there was one woman that we ended up traveling with for about a week. She was in her 50s, and she had done more than any person I've ever met then or since. She was traveling with her 10-year-old daughter, and she was just the coolest lady. And one day we were waiting to buy tickets to get on this slow boat that takes you up to the river to like another wild and wonderful village in the middle of nowhere. And there were these two young girls there with backpacks on in their 20s. And she just started watching them. And then she looked at me and she said, "Those two need to go home. They're done. This is over." And no one had ever talked to me about that. And it was really interesting about how you have to recognize when it's time to go home. That's just as important as knowing when it's time to go on an adventure. And there's a lot of ego and attitude sometimes in everything that we do, unfortunately, but certainly in the travel world as well. There's a lot of people that will be out there, certainly in the backpacking community, that will be like, "Oh, I've been on the road for 23 months." And the next person, "Well, I've been out here for 36. Like, it just goes on. And there can be a lot of people that just stay for the sake of bragging rights, but that is not helpful to anybody. It's not helpful to the country that you're in, because you get to a point where you're kind of miserable, right? Like after months and months and months, it's not easy. And there comes a time when you've seen too much, you've done too much, and you have to say it's over. But a lot of people push through that. So we had just this phenomenal conversation about this where no one talks about this stuff. So to me, it has now informed my decisions for long-term trips. I was out there for 4 months. I knew I was done by the 4th month. And if I hadn't gone through that with her, I too might have fallen prey to like ego and pressure and whatever. So moving forward, I actually implement that in a lot of parts of my life, and just like dialing into listening to yourself. And so that was very, very interesting for me. And she came along at the right time. And then there was this other wild, wild woman from Israel. She was in her 70s. She had been traveling by herself through China, through India, through the countries that we were now in with her. And I meet a lot of older people on the road who just like, you'll always meet 20 somethings, 30 somethings. But when you meet people in their 70s who are slinging backpacks and not staying in fancy places, and they're doing exactly the same stuff that you're doing, those are the legends on the road, and you must pay attention to them. Sometimes they can be a bit, interesting personality wise. And she sure was. I mean, we had no idea what was going to happen with her, but I will never forget her. Like these are not easy countries to go through. I mean, certainly in Southeast Asia, there's a lot more people out there traveling, but India and China are tough countries. And so, I mean, I will never forget my time with her. She was also, batshit crazy, if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast. And you'll read about her. And since then, I was just in Italy last summer, and I did some hiking in the Dolomites, and I was the youngest at second youngest I was 51 at the time, 50 at the time. And a lot of the people were in their late 60s, early 70s. And let me tell you, I was the last one coming off the mountain. I mean, certainly going up, I'm very fast, but coming down, I am 95. I'm not 73, because I'm terrified of like knees and ankles and all of that. And I also met a man in Bolivia. He was in his 80s. He was from Australia. He was a doctor. And we hung out for a few days. Like, these are the people that I will remember. I never remember a 25-year-old. I always remember these legends. So they are like, it's fascinating. And travel is not limited to certain ages. Adventure is always there for you. And it's a very good reminder to keep going and doing these things. It's wild who's out there.
Oh, I love hearing that. But the other barrier that comes to my mind anyway is like costs. Like, how can I afford to go to Italy and hike in the Dolomites? What would you say to people like that are concerned about, I can't afford to do that?
Yes, well, I also should probably look at my bank account too. I think there's always cheaper way to do things. So I do a lot of guided stuff because I don't trust myself to go hiking in the Dolomites alone. So there you have, a mountain guide, and they're kind of looking out for you. And I also really, really love the camaraderie of strangers. I find that very exciting and fascinating. However, it's not cheap to do it that way. But I think if you're with somebody, if you do stuff like this on your own, self-guided, or I think if you also hire a guide once you get there, it's much, much cheaper, right? They're going to give you a lot of the same things. You just, you're kind of winging it a little bit, but the internet has made this world so much easier to navigate. You will always, always find local operators that you can do these things with. So you don't always have to go with like these fancy companies that, get your money months before you get there. So that is one way. And again, it comes down to like accommodations. I have a friend who's been traveling for probably almost 15 years as a permanent nomad. And she 1 year did not spend, I don't think, much more than $300 on accommodation, because she was like house sitting. and volunteering places. And, so these are all the ways that you can save money to do things like this. There's a million things out there nowadays. The internet, I think, has changed everything. So it just depends what your comfort is as well, because, like that's always a factor for people. Like it's a thing to take into consideration about if you can handle that, like sleeping on someone's couch or in a stranger's house or looking after their pets or whatever it is that, it calls for that. But if there's a will, there's always a way, for sure.
So is that excuse me, is that part of your research? Like can you find those sort of things when you're sitting at home planning your trip?
Oh, I think certainly these days, yes, but I'm lazy. I often opt for group travel, or I've been very blessed with certain people in my life that are very good at these things, and together, it doesn't, if you like rent apartments through Airbnb and all that kind of stuff, it's so plentiful, like blogs, and just there's so many resources, and it's also word of mouth. I mean, when my radio show is on hold at the moment, but I had so many people at my fingertips, and it's just sometimes, you can interview someone who I had a friend who went and stayed in Havana, and I heard about that, and then he's sent me a link to the apartment that he stayed at, and then I stayed there too. So it's also having very good listening skills. You've got to perk up when you hear people talking about certain things. But again, like this person I was referring to earlier that's been on the road forever, she lived on boats. She went and cooked for somebody on a boat for like a week, or actually I think it was like months she did that, so she didn't have to pay a cent in accommodation. There's a million resources out there, but you also have to make sure that you're looking at the right resources, because there's 90% of the people are good in the world, but there's a few that aren't so good. And you also have to make sure that it's a bit of a fit. But I think there's more screening now. Like, I think because, you can meet somebody on Zoom or however you need to meet them, you can sort of do some preliminary checks on what you're getting yourself into. Whereas before, in the good old days, you just sort of, here I am. Let's see what happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, I took a trip to Italy in my late 20s, and it was like that. That
Yeah.
showed up in Rome. I didn't have anywhere to stay at the time, and
Yeah.
it was like, well, I'll walk around and see what I see and hope for the best.
Yes, I also had a trip like that at 19, and it's very questionable now how I survived that, but we did.
It's good memories though.
Yeah, but you have to, I think the thing is, social media it's a blessing and a curse, because I think there's a lot of people out there that post things that, we have these influencers now. I could go on about that, but everybody looks perfect and beautiful, and that they know exactly what they're doing, and they have the best clothes and equipment and gear, and it's such a lie. Because even if you've traveled a million times, you're still learning as you go. You're still making mistakes. I don't love this term expert. I mean, certainly there's a lot of people who've been doing this a lot and they know things, but they're also making mistakes. They're also like getting their bearings every time they land somewhere. And certainly you do learn along the way and you pick things up, but we're all just human. And so I think that can deter people sometimes, regular people, from thinking that these are things that they can do. It is for everybody. No, trust me, like, no, not everyone out there looks like a supermodel and has their act together. It is just normal people that are out there for a sense of adventure, and they're looking for something. But I that's what I always stress is like, do not think that we all know what we're doing when we're traveling. It is a lie. It's like, it's like anything in this world. I'm sure even skiing, or backcountry camping, I'm sure you are also still learning every time that you go out there. That is life. But there's just this lie that we're selling each other that we have it all figured out and that we look amazing doing it. It's just BS. And I guess for me, when I post things, I'm pretty transparent, and I don't really subscribe to that. So even in my book, I mean, it is full of my flaws and things that go wrong, and I think that's why people like it, because it's very human, and I think we need that more than ever these days.
I I'm really glad that we don't have smell-o-vision when I post stuff when I'm coming from the backcountry. That's for sure.
Oh, yes. I did a jungle trek in Colombia a couple years ago, and we smelled so bad at the end of that. There were like 10 of us from all over the world, and we were out there for about 4 days, and it was not easy. But I remember this German guy I was traveling with, like when we got back out of the wild and we were standing in this hotel lobby, and he's like, I'm gonna be sick, like all of you smell so gross, like I cannot stand it anymore. Yeah,
Dude, you smell too. Just saying.
yeah, that's what I did tell him that.
That's excellent. Where can they get your book?
Yes. Well, in Toronto, they can get it on Indigo online, but also in the Beaches area. So Book City and Coles, and then everywhere else in the world or in Canada on Amazon. So just look for The People You Meet by Melissa Rodway, because what I discovered is I don't have the only book with that title.
No kidding.
And can you imagine?
No.
That's, wow. Interesting. Well, it's a great title then. Maybe that's the thing.
It's the awesome subtitle, which is Luxury Leeches, Love and Lau Lau, with a host of interesting characters in Southeast Asia.
Leeches.
That's a subtitle.
Yeah, that's a good subtitle. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
That's it for us for today. Thank you so much to Melissa Rodway from the book, The People You Meet. Please do check her out. Check us out while you're there. We are on all the things, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and like and subscribe and share and do all the things. And if you want to talk to us, please do email us anytime at hi@supergoodcamping.com. That's hi@supergoodcamping.com. And we will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.